Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Today I want to talk about a site in the country of Jordan. What a lot of people don't realize is how many incredible biblical sites there are in Jordan. There is an ancient site in the country of Jordan that has long been identified as the biblical site of Peniel. Located north of the Dead Sea and east of the Jordan River is Wadi Zerka, through which flows the Zerka River, which in the Bible is called the Jabbok. Here is the site of Talul ed Dahab, made up of two hills, the smaller eastern hill and the much larger western hill called Tel Dahab West, which is covered with the ruins of an ancient city. Keep in mind, Peniel and Penuel are two slight variants for the same name.
So in 1 Kings 12:25, it says that Jeroboam built up Peniel, meaning he fortified Peniel. And so here we have the fortification walls at Peniel, and here the excavation team dug down to the base of these walls, and they found Iron Age II pottery, which is the time period that represents the reign of Jeroboam.
And so we have another match here between the archaeology and the biblical description. Located about 5 miles west of Tel Dahab is another ancient mound called Tel Der Allah. Genesis 33 says after leaving Peniel, Jacob went to Sukkoth. Jacob was continuing his journey west to Canaan, and therefore Merrill identified Tel Der Allah as biblical Sukkoth. In Judges chapter 8, Gideon and his men are traveling in the opposite direction. First they came to the Jordan and crossed it. Then Gideon spoke to the men of Sukkoth before he went up to Peniel on the Jabbok River. The biblical descriptions of these two sites is another reason why it was so obvious to Merrill that Tel Dahab was biblical Peniel. So the identification made all the way back in 1877 by Merrill that Tel Dahab is Peniel is very, very strong, and even stronger today than it was back then. What he does next in his great fear and distress makes a lot of sense. He knows that his brother and the men are coming in on the north side, so he puts his family and his possessions on the south side of the river. He's not a coward. He's not using his family as a buffer between him and the incoming threat. He's doing the opposite. He's using the river and himself as the buffer in between his family and his brother and the band of men that are coming in with him. So the next thing that Jacob is going to want to do is he's going to want to seek high ground. He's going to want to watch for his brother and the men coming into this area, because he's going to want to get to them before his brother and those men get to his family. And so the high ground on the north side of the Jabbok is the hill of Dahab. And so it's 295 feet above the Jabbok River. And so that's where he goes up to. It makes sense that he goes up on top of a hill. And that's where he's left alone. Now he's up on top of this high place. He can look for his brother. Now what's he going to do next? He's in great fear and distress. What else would he do? What else can he do but pray? Verse 9 says, Then Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, save me. And what does he pray for? It's a pretty simple prayer. Save me. And in response to his prayer for God to save him, this man shows up and wrestles with him until daybreak. It's very strange. And Jacob overcomes this man. He's got him in a lock. And the man says to him, Let me go, for it is daybreak. And Jacob says, I will not let you go until you bless me. Which is strange, because that means that he's the greater of the two. It's the greater that blesses the lesser. And the man asks him, What is your name? Jacob. Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Then Jacob says to him, Well, please tell me your name. Why do you ask my name? The man says. And then it says, Then this man blessed Jacob there. And Jacob named the place Peniel because he saw God face to face, and yet his life was spared. The obvious question after all of this is, who is this man? And this man from the account itself is obviously God. If this man isn't God, then why did he name him Israel, which means to struggle with God? If this man wasn't God, then why did Jacob name the place Peniel, which means face of God? Why did he say, because I saw God face to face? All we have to do is go to the prophet Hosea, who makes it very, very clear. He says that when Jacob was a man, he struggled with God and overcame him. He's talking about Peniel, what happened at Peniel. And then he says who this man is. He says, the Lord, all in capital letters, meaning that the four-letter name of God is found in the Hebrew there, Yahweh. This is the answer to Jacob saying to the man who he wrestled, what is your name? Why do you ask my name? Well, Hosea answers that Yahweh is his name. Derek Kidner, in his commentary of Genesis, explains, when God appears as a man in the Old Testament, he's usually called the angel of the Lord, a title interchangeable with God or the Lord. A study of the angel of the Lord passages leaves no room for doubt that the term denotes God himself as seen in human form. The very first time that Israel is mentioned in the Bible is in Genesis 32, when God changes Jacob's name to Israel. Jacob is the name that his parents gave him at birth. Israel is the name that God gives him at Peniel. This is when the God of his fathers becomes his personal God, where he refers to him as my God, my shepherd. Before Peniel, God was known as the God of Abraham and Isaac. After Peniel, God is known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
We just had our wrestling match up here, and I think I won. Well, the thing is, the only way that Jacob won wrestling God is that God let him win. And so I wanted to pass that blessing along to my son. And so I let him win.
That's what he says.
So the Bible says that Jeroboam built up Peniel. When they did the excavations up here on the summit of Peniel, they found from that time period a temple. And then on the layer above that was a later building. And it had stone columns that were in the shape of hearts. And so you see one right here.
While the excavation report does not give an interpretation of what this building might have been used for, one possibility is intriguing.
Now, what was the purpose of this building? Well, it makes sense, since it was on top of a temple, that it would continue that tradition of this place being a religious place. The religious buildings that come later that have parallels for these heart-shaped columns are synagogues.
And so this book I have here, Ancient Synagogues Revealed, in this book that talks about many of the synagogues in the area, have these stone heart-shaped pillars. The one at Capernaum, in fact, all of the synagogues around the Galilee region, with the exception of Chorazin, have heart-shaped pillars in them.
What better place for a synagogue to be built than at Peniel, where Jacob wrestled with God? So in the excavation report, they quote the survey of Robert Gordon that took place in the early 80s. He talks about the Roman and Byzantine pottery up here and says that there was a Roman occupation and a Byzantine presence. And you can see that that is the case, because etched into the side of this stone is a definite cross. And so what would Christians be doing coming up to this site? Well, that's what they did. They went on these pilgrimages to these significant biblical places. And so this would be one of those places, the place where Jacob wrestled with God.
So if we really think about what happened to Jacob at Peniel, Jacob was in great fear and distress, and he prayed and asked God, "Save me." And in response, God came down and appeared to him in the form of a man and wrestled with him and took the position of humility in order to bless him there. And this is what God has done for us when we cry out, "Save me." He has provided in the same way. God came down out of heaven. He became a man in the person of Jesus. And He took the place of humility, even death on a cross, in order to bless us, in order to answer our prayer of salvation. This site of Peniel is an amazing site, not because of what it looks like, but because of the profound event that happened there thousands of years ago and what it means to us today. And so I hope it was encouraging to you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.